Reaching the 10,000 subscriber milestone is a significant event in this channel's history, and I'd like to thank every subscriber who contributed to this achievement. In this video, I'll answer some questions I've received via either email, Discord, or my channel. Then I'll describe some changes I'll be making to this channel going forward. Here are the questions you've asked me which I thought most people might be interested in hearing me answer. If your question didn't appear here, it's because I already answered it via email, Discord, or a YouTube comment, and I thought the answer was too short to merit inclusion, or the topic was too niche. Question: which topics will you cover in the future? In particular, I'll be turning my focus to a number of YouTube creators who have made content with historical errors, such as Mark Felton's Bad History of Bushido and Samurai Culture, YouTube channel Horse's Bad History video, Chef Explains Why White People Don't Season Their Food, a second video on Rebecca Watson's Bad History of Homophobia in Uganda, a second video on Linus Borman's historical errors about the so-called Chop Suey font, a second video on a very specific error in Simon Clarke's otherwise excellent video about the history of climate change science, a video on Epic Economics' Bad History of the Chinese Opium Wars, and at least half a dozen on historical errors by history YouTuber Tick History. Speaking of whom, question: can you work on dealing with Tick's videos about religion, please? This is the biggest problem I have with him at the moment. Yes, I will be dealing with Tick's unfortunately uninformed videos on religion. I will first address his extremely bad video on Gnosticism entitled The Real Religion Behind National Socialism, then his equally bad video The Cult Many Are In But Don't Realize, which will lay the foundation for a critique of his very confused video Further Evidence That Hitler's Religion Was Gnosticism. But before those, I want to start with his more recent video Why Hitler Was Made Man of the Year in 1938, since it includes about half a dozen of his typical research mistakes and historical errors in just one video. So it's a good example of the very particular ways in which he distorts history when he steps outside the military history with which he is very familiar. Question: how do you research your videos? I've received this question in a number of different forms, which has actually prompted me to start writing a series on how to verify information and do proper research following academic methods. I want to describe the different sources you can use for research, explain how to differentiate between low and high quality sources, as well as demonstrating academic methods of validating sources so you can know if they're reliable, dealing with conflicting sources, and synthesizing information from sources into a coherent interpretation. I also want to demonstrate how to fact-check information, particularly of the kind commonly found on social media, especially YouTube. To return to the question, it really depends on what kind of video I'm making. Fact-checking videos in which I'm assessing the accuracy of an article, video, book, or movie are generally the easiest to research. I start by locating the sources cited by the content I'm checking. This is a lot harder if they haven't cited their sources, but sometimes it's possible to identify where information has been taken from, even if the sources aren't mentioned. I then examine the sources to see how well they've been represented. Then I assess the sources themselves for accuracy, usually by checking them against other relevant primary and secondary sources. If I'm doing original research, I use a combination of primary, secondary, and tertiary sources. I'll explain this in more detail in my upcoming series about how to do proper research, but simply put, I use tertiary sources to identify broad scholarly consensus and key commentary on a topic, secondary sources such as books for an in-depth treatment of the topic from specific perspectives, secondary sources such as journal articles for the most up-to-date and detailed commentary on very specific aspects of the topic, and primary sources which I find referred to in my secondary and tertiary sources whenever I need to check a claim about a primary source or analyze it myself. Question: when will you make a video about the Indian caste system? I've included this question because I've actually been asked to cover a number of subjects related to Indian history, such as the caste system, more information about the modern invention of transnational yoga, and a number of false historical claims made by Hindu nationalists. However, at this rate I won't get started on any of those until probably at least next year, since that's going to require a huge amount of work, especially given the recent historical revisionism which Hindu nationalists have been producing, such as claiming that the caste system was basically invented by the British and that Hindu society traditionally enjoyed high social mobility. Question: is that you wearing the armour in your photo? Yes, it is. I've been a practitioner of historical European martial arts for about 8 years, and although most of the weapons I've studied date to the Renaissance or early modern eras, in the last year I've started to move into Harnisfechten, which is combat in armour. The armour I'm wearing in this photo is nearly all from Ukraine. Most of it is stainless steel, though the helmet is made from hardened high-carbon steel. Most of this armour was made by a company called Armstreet, which mainly makes armour for cosplay and LARP, so it's not intended to be historically accurate, though some of their pieces are more accurate than others, and what I'm wearing here is fairly good, though it lacks important shaping details of historical armour. The decorative acid etching, however, is historical, though this didn't start becoming widely used on armour until the mid to late 15th century, and even more so in the 16th. The gloves are actually not metal, they're made of a hardened polymer, and I used to use them for regular sword fighting. I've since upgraded to a pair of steel gauntlets by Armstreet, which are pretty good in terms of historical accuracy. However, the helmet is very historically accurate, and was actually based on a museum piece. It was made by another armourer in Ukraine, and the main body was hammered out of a single piece of steel rather than from 2 different plates of steel shaped separately and then welded together. The visor has been decorated with a thin layer of brass. I've actually commissioned an entirely new set of armour from this blacksmith, including arm, leg and foot armour made from titanium to replace the stainless steel kit I have now. Stainless steel has the advantage of being light and rust-proof, though it's relatively weak. Hardened high-carbon steel, which is what my helmet's made of, has the advantage of being extremely strong, though it's heavier, my helmet weighs 5 kilograms, and can rust. Titanium has the advantages of being rust-proof, extremely strong, and exceptionally light. Its main disadvantages are that it's more brittle than stainless steel or high-carbon steel, so it's harder to reshape when it does dent, and the fact that it's incredibly expensive. Question: have any of the people you criticize in your videos reached out to you or responded to those videos? From memory, only 4 have made actual video responses or responded to me with a personal message. One was King Critical, whose history of transgender identity I critiqued, and he responded by basically changing his argument. Another was Linus Borman, who responded very graciously to my critique of his video on the history of the so-called Chop Suey font. A third was Simon Clark, who responded very graciously to my critique of his video on the history of climate change science. And a fourth was Jason Unruh, who responded very badly to my video showing how his predictions about the Russian invasion of Ukraine failed. He had insisted that Russia was not going to invade, though to give him credit, he did acknowledge he was totally wrong about this after the invasion. Now I want to talk about the changes I'll be making to this channel going forward. So far, I've uploaded a mixture of historical commentary and leftist commentary, which is proving increasingly difficult to manage. YouTube likes channels which focus on specific genres rather than diversifying, and finds it easier to recommend a channel's videos if it's easier to identify the most common subject of a channel's content. Additionally, subscribers can be confused, disappointed, or just lose interest if a channel's content switches subjects regularly. I've found my subscriber count swinging up and down quite wildly every time I release a history video after a leftist video, or a leftist video after a history video, and I would rather that didn't happen. Consequently, from this point forward, I'll be keeping this channel focused on history and will move the leftist content to a new channel I created called Academic Anarchist. See the link in the video description. I'll be uploading my previous leftist content to that channel at a rate of about 1 video each week, though I'll also be creating new content. I actually already have about 50 videos I could upload, and I'll probably upload 10 or 15 just to get the channel started. Additionally, I'll be editing and improving some of my previous leftist videos before uploading them to the new channel. These two channels will occasionally interact, each recommending the other at times, but they'll have distinctly different content which should provide a better experience for subscribers. Note that this channel will continue to examine historical events of interest to leftists, and the other channel will occasionally address historical issues from a leftist perspective, but the two channels will have clearly differentiated content. I'll also be changing the titles of my existing playlists on this channel to make it clear which aspects of history they'll be focusing on. For example, correcting bad ancient history, correcting bad medieval history, correcting bad religious history, correcting bad science history, correcting bad indigenous history, correcting bad colonial history, correcting YouTube content creators, which I suspect is probably going to be one of my more popular playlists. If you have any suggestions for the channel, please feel free to send me an email or just join my Discord to discuss them. See the link in the video description. Finally, I have recently revised all my Patreon tiers, removing a tier and adding more rewards to each of them. Some of the new rewards include voting on a video topic each month, requesting a review of an article or video, and participating in a monthly live stream. Thank you again very much to everyone who has supported this channel. It means a great deal to me to reach this new milestone.